Dune Part 2 is an epic blockbuster film, epic sci-fi film by director Denis Villeneuve, who I think is probably my favorite director of that type of movie, of the blockbuster movie. There's several out there. I think of that genre, I would give my the edge to Villeneuve. I think he's very interesting, and I think there's absolutely incredible moments throughout this film. I think right away when you first start this movie, you're blown away by the opening sequence and instantly sucked into this world and this story. The world building is fantastic, and if this is your kind of thing, if you like sci-fi blockbuster epics, this is could potentially be your favorite movie of all time. If you're someone who likes those kind of movies and hasn't yet checked out Dune Part 2, I don't really know what you're doing at this point. And Dune 1 is on streaming services, so you can find a way to watch that one if you haven't already. I would also say if you watch Dune 1 and maybe weren't crazy about it, I still think there's a lot of good value in Dune Part 2. I was kind of meh about Dune 1, but really I thought that I would say I really enjoyed Dune 2. Now, there is kind of a debate going on with in certain film circles about, a lot of people are bringing up certain plot elements and certain character moments that maybe were not fully fleshed out. And to be honest, this is something that I very much felt when I watched the movie. What I try to do here is I try to kind of gather as many thoughts as I can just on my own before I even, on the way home from the movie theater. I usually log my films on my letterbox, which is Jackson Kruger, if you're interested in following me there. Anyway, usually I log that before I look at anyone else's opinion, because that's kind of how I like to do things. But then I also want to hear what other people have to say. And there were plot elements that did kind of stick out to me. Quite frankly, and I'll get to more of it in spoilers. I'll do a spoiler section at the end of this video, but spoiler-free section. There were some, the love interest stuff wasn't really into. Quite frankly, I'm not a huge fan of, I think, Zendaya or Chalamet's performance. In a lot of things, to be honest, they're just not actors that typically speak to me for whatever reason. Might be a me thing, I don't know. But, it wasn't really into that. It was serviceable. It wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't something that I would watch a whole movie about, if that makes sense. And quite frankly, I didn't think it was very fleshed out. I know it's a long movie, but I didn't feel it was very fleshed out, and it does kind of want you to feel something about those characters that I just really didn't. And quite frankly, a lot of the plot aspect of this movie, I usually understand. Oh, okay, we're doing that now. Okay, fine. Sure. So there are some criticisms I would have about that. You might be sitting here and saying, wait a second, if you weren't crazy about the plot and you weren't crazy about the characters, what this is a disaster then. Why are you saying you enjoyed this movie? Well, because, I don't know, how not fun are you if you walk out of Dune 2 and all you have to say is, didn't really buy the love interest, 4 out of 10. Like, there's so many good aspects of this film that you are, again, part of it is maybe you're just, the awe moment, the moments of awe that we're all feeling. If you're not feeling that, like, it is what it is. You're not going to like the movie. But, usually, for me at least, I was feeling that in a massive way, and I was really excited, really glad I was able to watch this one in theaters, because I do think that, forget about the big screen, I have I can watch it on my TV, I can, the screen itself, I can sit close to my TV if I want a big screen, right? But the sound design is maybe my favorite thing about this movie, quite frankly. Very similar to Oppenheimer in a lot of ways, in the sense of, the way it kind of uses the at times fast-paced editing mixed with a kind of overpowering score to create that intended effect. I do think there's a lot of similarities in how Villeneuve and Nolan operate. I do think this is a flawed movie. I do. And in fact, I think a lot of people that even like this movie are like, yeah, like, there's some parts that, like, I wasn't crazy about. But I don't think that's the main reason to watch the movie. Again, it's a genre film, right? Like, you wouldn't walk out of a horror movie and say, yeah, it was all right, but there was a love story in the first 20 minutes that I wasn't totally into. It's like, well, okay, that's a fair critique. And if it takes you out of the movie, it takes you out of the movie. But that's also kind of not why you're here, right? And that's kind of how I felt about Dune Part 2. There were certain sequences in this film that I thought were just unbelievable. Like the riding the sandworm sequence, which that's all I'll say, because I believe that's in the trailer, but I don't want to get too into that while I'm not in spoilers. I thought was just an unbelievable feat of filmmaking. The way it was done, and quite frankly, some of these things, the way it was so clearly thought out, I just thought was incredible and masterful, I'll even say, at points in this movie. I thought that the production design and the special effects were also masterful. And one of the things I think Villeneuve does a great job at is he treats it as though he's just, if it was a real scenario, he treats the camera as if it's a real scenario. One thing that always takes me out of a movie right away is when you have a situation where there's, a special effects scene, and the camera isn't a real camera, right? Like it's in the special effects world. That's what they're doing. Sometimes directors will say, well, let's take advantage of it and have the camera move in a million different, like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is just the one that pops in my head of when they did kind of that fake, at the end, that fake one take where, it's shot like it's a one take. What took me out of it was the camera was moving in a way that the camera wouldn't typically move in. At least I believe that's what happened. That's how I felt when I was watching it. This Villeneuve does it a very different way. Villeneuve takes it in a much more grounded way where he is treating the camera as if it's, a real thing. And if it, maybe you'll have more access like helicopters when you don't have to actually put a camera up there, right? But still, things that our mind can conceive of being real, it makes it feel a lot more real. That's just one thing he does. Another thing he does is, he'll often have the, things in the way of the main shot, right? He doesn't just put the camera in a way where you're showcasing these special effects. He's kind of letting the special effects sometimes exist in the background. Sometimes you're not getting a great look at the special effects. Sometimes the lighting is making these special effects not be as clear and as in focus, but that makes it feel that much more real. And I thought this, again, for that alone, this movie is worth the price of admission. Just the special effects and how good all of that is. Like I said, some of these set pieces were incredible. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't crazy about, some of the performances. Christopher Walken was another one where I don't know what he's doing in that movie. And even Florence Pugh, I like both of them as actors, but I'm just you're not given a lot to do here, so because you're not given a lot to do, I just view you as the actor instead of as the character, right? If you were, I'm not saying I want no names across the board, no. I think having stars throughout the movie is fine. Javier Bardem, cool. Did a good job. That was absolutely fine. Even Josh Brolin, who isn't in the movie a lot, he felt like a real character to me. And my favorite, Dave Bautista, another one. It wasn't in the movie a lot, but felt like a real character to me. But there was just a few where it's you're not given a ton to do. Your character isn't distinct enough that you just kind of, Pugh and Walken were kind of the biggest examples of that for me personally. My favorite performance in this movie was Austin Butler. I thought that was just fun. I could see some people being turned off by it. He certainly was acting with a capital A, but you know what? I kind of like that. I thought it was a blast. I think it was over the top. Sure. Was it comedically over the top? Sure. Was it a blast though? Yeah, absolutely. And look at, I don't know, Darth Vader in Star Wars was comedically over the top at times, but now we look back on it and say that was awesome. I thought Austin Butler was great. I thought it was a blast to see all of that. So, I think that's most of my non-spoiler thoughts, so I can start wrapping it up, but very much enjoyed the movie. So I have to mention for the, few people that have watched a number of these reviews of mine at this point, I've decided to change my grading scale because I realized I was giving way too many 10 out of 10s, and I kind of wanted to just make it more of a curve. So I decided to essentially just take every score and the dock at 1 point for not every score, but a lot of scores. So that way, if I gave a 8 out of 10 in the past, it's probably a 7 out of 10 now, that kind of thing. So that's where, I feel about Dune 2. I would have given it an 8 out of 10, but docking it because I'm trying to adjust my grading scale. So 7 out of 10. Long-winded way of saying I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, but a very entertaining 7 out of 10. And kind of some of my issues I have to talk about in spoilers. Quite frankly, this isn't, I'll just get into it in spoilers. But 7 out of 10. Again, who should watch this movie? Well, if you like sci-fi, if you like epic movies, you should watch it. If you're not crazy about it, like I am, but still enjoy the occasional action movie and occasional sort of blockbuster movie, then just check it out. You'll enjoy it. It's a good theater-going experience. Just, get the large popcorn and the large soda, which, hey, every movie's better for large popcorn and large soda. That would be how I would recommend it. If these movies never work for you, and you just don't care about this stuff, like if you didn't like Oppenheimer at all, you didn't like, any of Villeneuve, didn't like any part of Dune Part 1, all that stuff, might be one to wait for streaming, but I don't know. I think the sound design and kind of the way that all factors in is worth it to see in theaters. Also, one thing I can't believe I almost forgot to mention, but I have to mention, was the sound effect that was like a few times throughout the movie, there's like this sound effect of like a woman like screaming, of like I don't know how to, that was a terrible way to do it. It was just a weird effect, and it was like, I don't know why they did it. It made me laugh every time I laughed silently, because I'm not going to laugh at an inappropriate part in a crowded theater. But I thought it was a laughable sound effect that they kept adding in the movie, and I don't know why they made that decision. I thought the music was so good, and the score was so great, and the sound design was so good throughout this movie, and then it just made one like insane decision that I don't know what they thought of, and it'd be really like impactful parts too, and then they just throw in this like woman screaming sound effect throughout, which I just thought was like an odd thing to do. I didn't really fully understand it. I don't know what that call was, but yeah, that was a weird one. But yeah, those are my spoiler-free reviews. Let's get into my spoiler. That was a weird way to say that. That was my spoiler-free review. Let's get into my spoiler-filled review starting right now. So, okay. 3, 2, 1. We are now officially in spoilers. I kind of touched on some of the plotting issues and some of the, I think character issues that I had. I want to start off with the kind of main character arc of Timothée Chalamet's character here, which is he has a decision he has to make, and eventually decides he's going to drink the poison that can help him sort of see the future and decide exactly what he wants to do. And I felt like that the decision to decide to drink it kind of came out of, it didn't feel fully earned for me. It didn't, yes, he had in some ways changed up until that point throughout the movie. It didn't feel fully like, oh yeah, I absolutely see why, you have changed as a person. And then once he drank it, he did his full character arc almost in one moment, because then he the way I understand it, but I didn't even fully get when I had watched it live. I saw people online kind of explaining it, but essentially he saw the future enough to kind of realize this is what has to be done, and that's why he had that shift. And while that shift was interesting to me, it did very much feel a bit out of left field, right? I mean, you talk about 2 movies back to back, and this happens, in the last 40 minutes, very all of a sudden, which is not a bad thing necessarily. I don't think it's like an insult. It's jarring. It is a jarring thing to have happen, which, to be honest, I kind of thought it was interesting. Like, I'm not mad at it necessarily, but I also would say that it maybe doesn't make the first aspects of the movie feel as earned, because it kind of happens a little bit quickly towards the end. To kind of elaborate exactly what I mean, traditionally, that moment, called the break into 3, is a character who is making a decision that, kind of impacts the rest of or is going to impact the final act of the movie, and the reason they make that decision is because of everything that's happened to them so far into the story. And when it felt a little bit rushed, it kind of means that the character moments we did get throughout the movie, which again I didn't think were fully fleshed out, in my opinion, it just didn't fully work for me. That's all. And again, I could see it working for other people, because there was like a legitimate explanation for why it was rushed. It wasn't just like they accidentally rushed it. Like, no, this is what they were trying to do. It just didn't fully work for me. I mentioned the relationship with Zendaya and Chalamet, which, again, they didn't even really, I feel like they didn't really try that much. Like, there was no real reason for me to see why they liked each other and why they were into each other. And it didn't, it almost felt like when you have, like, I don't know, 2 friends in your friend group that start dating, and you're just like, but you haven't hung out with them while they're dating, like as a couple at all. So it's like, them being together or not being together, it didn't really impact anything to me. And at the end, it did feel like they wanted that emotional impact, and I did not have any emotional impact throughout these characters, which I thought were, again, fine, but usually the villains were the ones that I enjoyed more, and even in that scenario, they were very much cookie-cutter evil villains, I thought. They just were, which is, again, not necessarily a bad thing, but, I made the Darth Vader comparison earlier. Darth Vader, very much not just cookie-cutter evil villain. He has, a lot of, there's more interesting stuff there, although, again, comparing anyone to like a dark character like Darth Vader is unfair, and Emperor Palpatine was pure evil. So, it happens. It is what it is. I'm not crushing it. I'm just saying these were aspects that I didn't particularly love about the movie, and quite frankly, I found the final act to be a bit messy. I was not into the final act. I just wasn't. I was getting right. Okay, here's the cool battle. Awesome. Everything we've been leading up to, and then they just kind of win instantly, and it's like, oh, okay. I guess that, and even the duel between Austin Butler and Chalamet, like, just, ending with just a knife stabbing off screen, like, oh, actually, Austin Butler was stabbed, and he's dead now. Goodbye. Like, oh, okay. I kind of would have liked to feel that a little bit more earned. The whole thing the movie was building up to, instead of if it's just happening and then that's the end of the movie. Well, there's a little more there after, but that was kind of the climax of the film, and at least part of it. So and just in general, it did feel like Chalamet's kind of crew, right? I'm not too into the Dune lore, so I can't give the exact verbiage that maybe some Dune heads would give. But Chalamet's crew was just so dominant in their wins. I don't know. It's like watching the Kansas City Chiefs play like the Dolphins. It's just like, oh, this isn't going well for the opposed team, which is like fine for a period, but when you kind of want to see a little bit more struggle. At least I did. Again, I say all these issues. You might be thinking, wow, you hated this movie. They really didn't bother me that much, though. Like, I think I can come up with, like, probably a dozen more issues that I had, but, like, I didn't really care that much about it, because it's like, I'm not thinking while watching, I guess I would say there were points when I'm watching it where I'm like, can we get back to the worms? Can we get back to, like, the sweeping set pieces? I do feel like some of these movies kind of fall into, a lot of the dialogue scenes, you're kind of just waiting to get back to the action. That is just something that does happen sometimes, and this is no exception. So yeah, there were issues, but again, I was mostly having a good time. Like, I'm not going to sit here and like crush this movie or anything like that. It's also fair to say, like, maybe it's not really a Villeneuve issue and not really like a filmmaker issue, and just the story itself has those issues. Like, I'm not putting it all on the filmmakers by any means. Why would I do that? It's an adaptation. But yeah, because I did try to read Dune at one point, and I kind of fell out of it. So maybe I'm just not a huge fan of the story in general. Totally possible, but again, still had a really good time. Still would, if you watched all this and still are unsure if you should see it, I would still recommend seeing it. I think it's fun. Worth the trip to the movie theater, and just fun to see movies. What else is on? What else is on right now? It's the best movie in theaters right now, at the very least. So definitely, check it out. Maybe not one of my favorite Villeneuve movies, but if there's a new Dune, I'm certainly going to be very early on to see it, and I'm very interested in seeing whatever Villeneuve decides to do next, whether that's the next Dune movie, or I don't know if anything's been announced, or if he's going to do something else. Maybe I'd be more interested if he's doing something different than Dune, but I'd still be first in line if he's doing another Dune. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.